So, hello children, let us see the last segment of this video and the slides in which we are going to discuss the last portion of the chapter that is called the nationalism in India. In the previous three videos, whatever we have discussed, you might have understand I have suggested you how to just keep the thing easy for us to understand history, just creating a timeline year wise. So in this chapter, we will try to understand that what are the contribution of the civil disobedience movement. You have seen that civil disobedience movement, it has a widespread what call effect on the Indian history, and as well as it has created a huge challenges for the colonial ruler who were just administrating India. But it has some of the limitations as well. But how the nature of civil disobedience movement was different compared to non-cooperation movement, that also we have discussed. So in this particular segment of the slides and the video, we will try to understand later part of the chapter, and let us begins with that. What contributions civil disobedience movement had in the Indian nationalism or in the history of India. So the main contribution that civil disobedience movement has offered was it was the first struggle to win the Poorna Swaraj or complete independence. It means it was the first freedom struggle or freedom movement which come with the idea of complete independence. The civil disobedience movement was based on Satyagraha, which was the Gandhian ideas and widely followed throughout the country. The most important contribution of the civil disobedience movement, we have seen the women's participation in the larger number. So it was a really mass movement, we can say. Why? Because in civil disobedience movement we have seen the people from a different social group, they have participated, and it was the one kind of such a moment which openly challenged the British administration in India, that the people are now going to disobey the British laws and the British rule. So this is what the civil disobedience movement has contributed. So we know that civil disobedience movement though has a great impact and it has shaken the colonial ruler in the country, even then it's failed to attain its set goal. Why? Some of the points we have discussed in the previous video, like when Gandhiji come back from second round table conference, and when he has relaunched the civil disobedience movement, then that essence, that enthusiasm, or that attachment with the movement among the many people was already lost. Why? Because they have their own way of getting connected with the civil disobedience movement, but when they find the things were not going as they were expected or expecting, then ultimately they have lost their interest. So some of other limitations were there with the civil disobedience movement, and because of which it's failed to attain the objective. So let us try to understand what are these are very simple. As we know that India is a land of different social groups, no? So one of the main limitations why the civil disobedience movement lost its objectives and momentum was what the Dalits, so-called the downtrodden people, did not participate in this moment, because Congress did not give importance to their demands. This is the first limitation. Another, many Muslims did not participate in it. As you see, in the case of non-cooperation movement, the participations of this group of the people was more, but in this large number of people, means not large number of Muslims people, they have participated, though the participation was there from Muslims people side also, but their participation was less. That's why I said that many Muslims did not participate in it. they thought that Congress was moving close to the Hindu Mahasabha. That was some thought. These Muslim people, they have their own thought, and we cannot have a control on anyone's thought. They have their own thought that Congress might be moving towards the Hindu Mahasabha, and that made what Muslims people keeping themselves away from this moment. That's why it did not get that kind of support what it had, what the non-cooperation movement has got. So this is another limitations of the civil disobedience movement. Next to that, there was a communal riots occurred in many places, and because of which the disunity between the Hindus and the Muslims again seen or started. They were not find united. Gandhiji has tried his best to bring these two majority of the people closer to each other during the non-cooperation movement, but in civil disobedience movement, once again it has seen there was a lack of unity among these two majority of the people. Industrial workers participations was very minimum. So these were some of the limitations because of which civil disobedience movement did not achieve its goal. So let's move to that. As we have discussed right now, there was a lots of divisions or disintegrations among the different people coming from different social background. So some efforts to overcome or uplift the condition of some group of the people, so-called Dalit, Gandhiji has initiated. So as in civil disobedience movement, the Dalits did not participated. Many some orthodox ideas hit the mind of many people or who were just participating in that moment. That's why Gandhiji was against the idea of untouchability, which was in practice in those days. That was also one of the bitter fact. It was in practice in those days. That's why to improve or uplift their condition and let this group of people also made participate in the days to come for the freedom struggles. Gandhiji said that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not abolished. So main thinking of Gandhiji was that he wanted to abolish the caste, this untouchability, so that this group of people also, so-called Dalit, who feel like rejected during the moments. And why? Because that practice was in society in those days. So remove this kind of evil practices, and to make these people also mingle with the other majority of the people, he tried to abolish the untouchability. So he called untouchables, this Dalit, as a Harijans, which means the children of God. So he organized Satyagraha to get temple entry and access to public wells, tanks, roads and schools for Dalit. You may be knowing about the temple entry movement, no? So in those days, if you see in the many part of the western part of our country, so many people, so-called upper caste, like that, ours was a caste-based society those days. So they were not allowing these Dalits to enter in the temples. They were not allowing this group of people to use the public wells. So that's why, if you remember, the temple entry movement also launched by Ambedkar to give them an equal right, that they too have an equal right like the others. They too have a right to worship the God, to enter the temple, to use the public wells, tanks, roads and schools. Ambedkar has launched that movement, and finally to make them or support them or to organize them, Gandhiji too has organized a Satyagraha, and he fought for the right of the Dalits. He has asked the many people to give up all these practices which are not healthy. So this is what the effort he has taken. Not only that, he cleaned the Harijans colonies, and his ashram. There was no caste feeling. So to abolish these untouchabilities and to uplift the condition of these Dalits, he not only organized a satyagraha, but also he himself get engaged in the cleaning work in the Harijans colony, so that at least people could make a mind. So he appealed the upper caste Hindu to give up the inhuman practices of untouchability. So these are some of the ways the Gandhiji tried to uplift the condition of these people who felt that they are rejected, their emotions and their dignity are not respected, because of which they did not participated in the civil disobedience movement. And Gandhiji was trying to prepare this all group of people coming together, abolishing these evil practices, so-called untouchability. Now let's see, when one hand Gandhiji was taking such initiative, another hand the Ambedkar too was fighting for the good condition of Dalits. So when after the civil disobedience movement, somewhere that all the prominent leaders of the Congress and various other party, when they realized that very soon um, India is going to achieve the independence, they started to have their own plans for the welfare of their people or the community. So in such case, what happened? There was a conflict arise between the Gandhi and the Ambedkar's ideology. It's not that they dislike each other, but they have their own ideologies, the ideas, and both of them were just thinking about this group of people and their upliftment, so-called Dalit. But how they just place forward their ideas and what they demanded for the betterment of these people, here is a bit differences. Like, let us see, Ambedkar has demanded a separate electoral for the Dalits. He thought that share in political power would help in their upliftment. Gandhiji opposed separate electorates. He thought that it would create a disunity. So they clash in the second round table conference. This was another side, that Ambedkar wanted a separate electorals for the Dalits, and Gandhiji was in another opinion. He thought that if separate electoral would be given to the Dalit, then there will be a gap between the common people, or so-called the upper caste, and the this lower caste, so-called Dalit, in the days to come. That's why he was in not support of this idea. And there was a conflict, there was a clash, and Gandhiji went in hunger fast or hunger strike. Finally, when Gandhiji has went in hunger strike, then Ambedkar, he did not had any other options, and ultimately he dropped the demand of separate electoral, but he just demanded the some reserved seats for the Dalits in the constitution, so that in the coming days they should not be humiliated, or their rights, their dignity and their value system could not be hit at all. And when Gandhiji went in hunger fast, and finding no way, now Ambedkar, he is just ready to accept what Gandhiji has suggested. And ultimately, in September 1932, a Poorna Pact was signed between Gandhiji and the Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and Gandhiji brought an end of his fast. He accepted the demand of reservation of seat for the Dalits in the legislature. Ambedkar agreed to give up the demand of separate electoral. So this is how the things were going in the later part of the history. But you see, not only here, when we have seen the civil disobedience movement has given lots many ideas how the people they have their own uh, ideas, they have their own understanding, the meaning they give to the Swaraj. Then ultimately to overcome all these differences and to bring all the people, or to just organize all the people with the common identity, or to unite the people who are disintegrated because of their own several factors. Some of the initiative has been taken. These are cultural factors in the identities which create a sense of collective belongingness. Now, like you see the image of Bharat Mata, it is being created, okay, by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. He created the image of Bharat Mata, and Abanindranath Tagore painted the image of Bharat Mata. So all these things, why it is done? Just to uh, bring the people or organize the people as an Indian, just leaving or their existing differences apart. So this initiative were taken. So see in the pictures also that which was painted and that created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and painted by Abanindranath Tagore. The Bharat Mata's picture was shown like sannyasi. She is calm, divine, and spiritual. Devotions towards her become a proof of nationalism. So why this common such a pictures is created, so that all the people coming from diverse backgrounds based on religion, caste, gender, class. So based on all these diverse differences, let they should come with the one identity, one belongingness. Seeing that image also, people will, if get connected, that is what will be the beginning or the sprout of the idea of nationalism. Do you remember in the first video we just try to understand that what is nationalism? So nationalism is what? Nationalism is the sense of belongingness. So like that, the efforts to unite the people were not only without problems. See, this has been done, but it means not like that it didn't have any problems. National anthems were composed so that people's being, but even then there were series of problems has been seen. So in the later part in this video we have seen that so many ups and downs were there with the idea of to spread the idea of nationalism or feeling of nationalism. So finally, what we have seen within the period of 1950 to 1930, what were the different things that happened which shaped the idea of nationalism? Finally, you see, though it failed to achieve many of its set objectives, set goals, but we cannot say though it has without any outcomes. It has a wider outcomes. It has weakened the British administration from diverse side. If you see the economically, politically, socially, from one side the people are getting organized, another side the British are facing huge opposition and demonstrations against the system of administration they are giving here. So last part, just creating that much of collective ideas to unite the people. It is not completely easy to say that it was all the problems were sorted out. Now see, the people who are coming from diverse background, no, with their growing anger against the colonial rule for different reasons, those were brought together by the Congress against the colonial rule, right? Congress under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi tried to channelize the people grievances into organized movement for independence. So people have lots of their own opinion about the British rule, and all these were tried to club up, and their anger or their disliking for the colonial rule is been well channelized by the Congress, and further it was used or utilized to give a momentum for the nationalist movement. Though diverse group, class participations, and expectation often lead conflict and disintegration, even it able to save the feeling of nationalism. Though there was some conflict, if you see along with the nationalist movement, though we are not discussing that aspect because it is not necessary here. Our main intention is to understand the chapter what is nationalism and how the idea of nationalism grow, what were the incidences happened, what were the historical happenings, what were their outcomes, why, what is their importance, that we need to understand. That's why we ignore the minor conflict and riots or fighting or disliking so many comments. We just try to skip that one. So here even then, though there was lots of what call divisions of ideas, thoughts were there, but even then it seems till the 1930 compared to 1915 the idea of nationalism has gained its momentum. So chapter deal up to here. Finally, when this momentum was gained, the idea of nationalism, this momentum, that feeling, just people filled with this, such a feeling. Later in the 1942, finally, the Quit India movement was launched by the Mahatma Gandhi, giving all the best training to the people to follow the concept and the idea of Satyagraha, and that was the last freedom struggle. After which we gained independence in 1947. So the chapter here deal up to 1930, and finally later phase of the history, 1942 Quit India movement was launched, and 1947 we achieved independence on 15th of August. So this is all overall major point and the glimpse of the chapter I try to discuss here. So I hope that with this help in these situations where we do not have a possibilities is very less to have a face-to-face learning, and moreover we are in such a part of the country where communications is still and its infrastructure yet need lots of improvement. Even then, this is my initiative. I have never done I have never done teaching in such a way. This is a first trial for me. So I hope that at least something I able to make you enrich. So before going to wind up this particular chapter, so-called nationalism in India, and with another writing materials or whatever the assignments I will suggest you, that is okay. But I would like to suggest one assignment here. Can you create a timeline of this particular chapter? You just prepare one timeline and send it in your school group which is created. And how to prepare timeline, in my previous video I have told you. Just listen that carefully and get the idea, and getting that idea you try to prepare the timeline of this chapter. Thank you so much. Stay well, stay safe. Bye.